The invention and the evolution of the piano. When one thinks about musical instruments, the image of a piano is often one of the first to come to mind. Pianos have become such an integral part of our day-to-day lives, a common sight in restaurants, in households, and in schools. The invention and evolution of this instrument has taken place over the course of the last 5 centuries, and what began as a personal project of a harpsichord keeper from Italy became one of the most widely played instruments in the world. The idea of the piano didn't come to Bartolomeo Cristofori in a eureka moment, but instead originated from a decades-long need for a string and keyboard instrument that allowed for dynamics. Cristofori's pianoforte was preceded by other string and keyboard instruments such as the dulcimer in the 14th century, the clavichord, the spinet, the virginal, the clavecin, the gravicembalo, and finally the harpsichord in the 1600s. The harpsichord was the instrument that led directly to the invention of the piano. The two instruments are extremely similar, and up until the invention of the piano, the harpsichord was the loudest of any keyboard and string instruments. The problem that promoted Cristofori to his invention was that the harpsichord was incapable of adjusting dynamics, meaning that while it was capable of playing loudly, it was not capable of playing softly. An instrument was needed where the hammer could hit the string and then return to its original position without dampening the string, without bouncing too much, and in rapid succession so as not to interfere with the player's technique. Bartolomeo Cristofori was the ideal person to take on this challenge. Employed by the Grand Prince of Tuscany, Ferdinando de' Medici, Cristofori worked as the keeper of the de' Medici's personal instruments, including their collection of harpsichords. It was at his employer's request and with the de' Medici's funding that Cristofori was able to work on his invention. The exact date of the invention is unknown, but the earliest mentions of the instrument suggest the early 1700s. The oldest surviving piano is currently on display in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City and is dated to 1720. While Cristofori is credited as the main inventor, there were many others who contributed to and continued the piano's evolution into the instrument that it is today. Gottfried Silbermann was working on an almost identical model while Cristofori was working on his pianoforte with one crucial difference. Silbermann implemented what would become the forerunner of the modern damper pedal, which lifts all the pedals at once in order to remove the dampers from all the strings at once. In 1821, Sebastian Farard invented the double escapement action, which lets notes be repeated in rapid succession thanks to his lever, which is still in use in modern pianos, and changed what pianos were technically capable of playing. Henry Pape introduced felt to the piano hammers in 1826, which changed the sound of the piano greatly, and Jean-Louis Bousselot invented the sostenuto pedal in 1844, which allowed for notes to be suspended longer than ever before. Each of these inventions were crucial to the continued use and evolution of the instrument. Cristofori's life changed little with the invention of the piano. The new instrument was expensive to manufacture, and since it was still so new, there was no real demand for it. He did sell several to the Spanish and Portuguese courts, which gave him some additional income, but he continued to work for the de' Medicis until his death, continuing to make improvement on his pianos. Cristofori did train Giovanni Ferrini in the later part of his life, who continued his work and kept the knowledge of how to construct these instruments alive until their popularization. Pianos started out as one of the most expensive instruments money could buy right at its invention, and only royalty and the inventor's employers were able to afford it. Slowly, the instruments came into more demand as a status symbol of the aristocracy, and through the demand became more affordable. Nobles strived to be rich enough to own a piano and to hire music masters to teach their children how to play, and those able to were widely admired. While women were discouraged from playing professionally, playing the piano was a skill more often taught to girls than boys, and came to stand for women's marriage eligibility. Haydn, Mozart, and Beethoven have each dedicated difficult works to their female friends, which speaks to their playing abilities. Bach was the first composer to bring the piano into the limelight around 1760. He was the first composer to write a piece specifically for the piano rather than just using a piano to play a harpsichord piece, and the emotion he was able to portray in the dynamics brought the piano to the public's attention. With the Industrial Revolution, it became easier to reproduce the piano on a massive scale, and it quickly rose to a middle-class status symbol as well. According to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, by the end of the 19th century, no middle-class household of any stature in Europe or North America was without one. The rise of the middle class and the additional leisure time created by the Industrial Revolution added to the rise in popularity and in the amount of people interested in playing musical instruments. The piano benefited primarily composers above anyone else. The instrument covers between 7 and 12 octaves depending on the type, making it the ideal instrument to write music on. Its ability to control dynamics has shaped the way composers have been able to write orchestra pieces, and it has revolutionized accompaniment pieces as well. Its visual application of music theory has been a major asset to composers as well as to learners and teachers. According to Dominic Ferreira, it is accessible from a playing standpoint in that you don't have to hold it or blow it, so that it is easy for young children to play, which is why it's one of the first instruments children are introduced to in many music programs. The piano is still widely used today and has been dubbed the eternal instrument, but that does not mean that it hasn't evolved since its invention in the 1700s. For one thing, pianos have grown significantly in size. Originally consisting of 54 keys, standard pianos now have 88. Pianos have also begun to incorporate new technologies in the form of self-playing electric pianos, also called reproducing pianos, as well as digital versions of the instruments and synthesizers, which continue the evolution of the keyboard instrument. It is hard to imagine the modern day without the piano. It is such a constant theme in art, history, music, pop culture reference, and such a common sight in our homes that we forget about the process needed in creating it. From an instrument meant for the rich to a middle-class staple, from Padua to across the globe, the piano's influence has spread more than its inventor Cristofori could ever have imagined.